Discover the enigma of Akhenaton, Egypt's most controversial pharaoh whose radical religious reforms shook the ancient world. Unveil the legacy of Akhenaton the Good, idolized by Western Egyptologists as a Christ-like figure, and explore his ruthless suppression of Egypt's polytheistic traditions. Was he a visionary or a madman? Unearth the hidden ties to the Hyksos and their biblical lineage, challenging traditional views of Egyptian history. Journey into the heart of religious turmoil as Akhenaton's reign transformed Egypt forever, leaving behind a legacy of intrigue, power, and a singular devotion to the sun god Aten that defied millennia of polytheistic tradition. Akhenaton, the enigmatic pharaoh and his cult of personality. The Genesis of the Grail Kings by Laurence Gardner provides insight into Akhenaton's early life. This son was sent to live with Tiye's relatives in Goshen and was raised by Tiye, the wife of Tiye's brother, who was a Levite. Amenhotep received education at Heliopolis and as a teenager lived in Thebes. The first group of Western Egyptologists, including Arthur Weigel, Flinders Petrie, and others, many of whom were under aristocratic and royal patronage, consistently portrayed Akhenaton and his regency in positive terms. They initiated the cult of Akhenaton the Good, Akhenaton the Shelley, and Akhenaton the Christ of Egypt. There is barely a scholar of repute who was dissented from this skewed consensus. Author Joanne Fletcher describes the manner in which prominent archaeologist and antiquarian Arthur Weigel portrayed the psychopathic demagogue whom he and so many other experts found so worthy of adoration. As the first to write a biography of the king, he considered him a complete pacifist with a conscientious objection to warfare, and not only a Christ, but a 19th century romantic, with a touch of Hamlet thrown in for good measure. Dr. Joanne Fletcher, The Search for Nefertiti. From the Scottish archaeologist Professor Flinders Petrie, if this were a new religion invented to satisfy our modern scientific conceptions, we could not find a flaw in the correctness of its view of the energy of the solar system. How much Akhenaton understood, we cannot say, but he had certainly bounded forward in his views and symbolism to a position which we cannot logically improve upon at the present day. No rag of superstition or of falsity can be found clinging to this new worship evolved out of the old Aten of Heliopolis, the sole lord or Aten of the universe. The broken kings, Akhenaton's legacy, and the cult of the Aten. In the transition into the Age of Aries, the rulers in Egypt, particularly the prominent leaders of the solar cult, have been identified as the broken kings of the 18th dynasty. These leaders were the ancestors and descendants of Amenhotep IV, Akhenaton. Scholars Ahmed Osman, Mustafa Gadala, and Ralph Ellis said many of these personalities served as prototypes for later biblical characters. Akhenaton was a priest in the cult of the sun and the controller of the Brotherhood of the Snake, who worshipped the god Aten, also Aten, Aden, and Adonai. Akhenaton is described as a deranged and obsessed megalomaniac. He made a controversial decision that no previous pharaoh had considered before. He forcibly eliminated the worship of all other gods in Egypt and reduced financial support to the temples and priests. Although some scholars suggest that he intended to spiritualize the country, his real aim was the opposite. It seems that he wanted to despiritualize Egypt, favoring monotheism over pantheism. His demented concern was that the god of his Levitical family had to be everyone's god. Few in Egypt shared his sentiments or thought this was a good idea. He had support only from other family members, henchmen, and court guards from foreign parts hired to protect him, and certain Hyksos sun priests at Heliopolis, Avaris, and Memphis. These Delta solar cult priests appear to have had a hand in electing the pompous king to his elevated but much misused office. The actions of both Thutmose IV and Amenhotep III must have made a tremendous impression on Akhenaton before he came to the throne. Akhenaton's devotion to and preoccupation with the sun disk, the Aten, certainly had its origins in the eventful last decade of his father's rule, Lorraine Evans' Kingdom of the Ark. The Hyksos influence and Akhenaton's ancestry. The connection to Heliopolis can be explained once we consider the theory that author Ralph Ellis, who, following the 19th century scholar Donald Mackenzie, believes Heliopolis to have been dominated by the Hyksos kings. Authors William Bromley and Laurence Gardner define these kings as part of what is known as an ancient bloodline called the Dragon Bloodline, and the Hyksos were none other than the biblical Levites. The Hyksos lived largely in the Delta region with only nominal control over Upper Egypt. Gradually, a new native Egyptian power base was consolidated around the city of Thebes, Luxor, and an independence movement gained in strength. The Hyksos period came to an end around 1567 BC, where they were eventually defeated by this new upsurgent power and the new kingdom was born. Adrian G. Gilbert, Magi, The Quest for a Second Tradition. If Akhenaton and his family before him was of the Hyksos bloodline, then his bizarre and sacrilegious actions would make a great deal of sense. But it should be realized in any case that Akhenaton was not the legitimate heir to the throne of Egypt. His mother Tiye was not of Egyptian blood and was not acknowledged as being a spiritual daughter of the god Amun-Ra. A female had to be in order to have legal rights to the throne. Since Tiye did not possess this right, her son Akhenaton did not either. It can be argued that almost every pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, as well as the Hyksos kings from the 13th dynasty to the 18th, were not, in the true spiritual sense, legitimate pharaohs. It has been found interesting that Akhenaton, Tutankhamun's father, was hated by the priests of the time, who could not countenance the fact that he was born from the matriarchal line of a Semitic woman. Gerald O'Farrell, The Tutankhamun Deception. Nevertheless, Akhenaton certainly was not the legitimate heir. When he and his cult of Levite followers were deposed, they naturally found it expedient to obscure their identity, the Israelites, Judites, Levites, and not openly proclaim or emphasize their relationship to Egypt. Historians have followed suit, so it is only now in relative recent times that the truth about the origins of the Judites and the Levites has surfaced, and this truth has been highly contested because of what it means. The legacy of religious turmoil, Akhenaton's impact on Egypt. The atrocities committed by Akhenaton in the name of his god have been noted by a few scholars not as eager to lionize this madman who plunged Egypt into chaos and ruin. It's known that 7 years after occupying the throne, the integrated system of politics, economics, and culture that Egypt had known for 1700 years had been drastically modified, if not turned upside down on its head. In recent years, he has been described by such names as Great Idealist, Great Reformer, the world's first revolutionist, the first individual in human history, etc. But in view of the known facts of history and Dr. Elliot Smith's remarks quoted above on the distortion of the skull of Amenhotep IV, we are fully justified in wondering with Dr. Hall if the king was not really half insane. E.A. Wallace Budge, Tutankhamun, Amenism, Atenism, and Egyptian Monotheism, 1923. Did the Egyptian people despise the self-proclaimed monotheist Akhenaton and his elitist solar cult? Did they attempt to oust this leper messiah, who they referred to as the cripple, the great villain, and heretic king? Yes, they most certainly did. But like all theological tyrants, Akhenaton used force to suppress dissent. His way was the only way. His religion was the only religion. His God was the only God. This Christ of Egypt would have you believe, or he would have you die and be damned. Even before the discovery of their tombs, Tutankhamun and Shmenkare were both known to Egyptologists through various inscriptions recovered from excavations, yet oddly neither of them appeared on any royal list. Like the two other kings of the period, Akhenaton and the Pharaoh A, their successors had erased their names from history. In the eyes of later generations, they had committed acts of unsurpassed evil by prescribing the traditional gods and establishing a new monotheistic religion. Graham Phillips' Act of God. For thousands of years, Egypt had been fairly a stable society. The capital cities, temples, gods, arts, and social structure of the empire had changed little, both before and after the reign of the rebel pharaoh. Akhenaton would go on to transform all of these aspects. His entire career was extraordinary. This is the first time in Egyptian history that we find the king's cabinet composed almost totally of army generals who could have gained their positions of power and later on the throne only as the result of a military coup. Ahmed Osman, Christianity in Egyptian religion. As Akhenaton's monuments crumble and his name fades from royal lists, his legacy endures as a testament to audacious ambitions and religious fervor. His cult of personality, once hailed as revolutionary, now stands as a cautionary tale of unchecked power and religious intolerance. Yet the mystery of his lineage and the true motivations behind his radical reforms continue to intrigue scholars, challenging us to consider the boundaries between enlightenment and fanaticism in the annals of ancient Egypt. Is there more to uncover? Subscribe to the channel, don't forget to hit the like button and share the video. Until next time.